Welcome. You are listening to the Fat and Furious podcast. In this podcast series, your host, Steve Bennett, father of 7, best-selling author and adventurer, will be joined by 23 of the world's most forward-thinking medical professionals. Doctors, authors, and top nutritionists, where he'll share the truth behind living healthier and happier for longer.
Today I'm joined by a really good friend, Dr Shan Hussain. Now, we've all known Dr Shan for quite a while. He's been working with Primal Living and working with us to help support health and well-being. However, what you might not be aware is last year, this very fit doctor suffered a heart attack. So we're going to talk to Shan. He's going to talk really openly about his journey, his heart attack, and what he's done since that event to make sure that he does everything he can to protect himself and his family for the future. Dr. Shan.
Steve.
Mate, so great to see you.
Likewise.
So great to see you looking well, and I'll explain in a minute why I start with that, because I wouldn't normally start with that, but so great to see you looking well. For those that don't know Dr. Shan, he's written a brilliant book called The Big Prescription. It talks about the key pillars of health, and it's absolutely fascinating. He's got an amazing podcast series. If you think this one's any good, his is brilliant. In fact, he's my teacher, right? In fact, he was the one that said to me, you must do a podcast. And he also helped introduce me to some of the brilliant people that are on the series. So a huge thank you for everything you've done for us.
Gosh, you're replacing my ego. You should stop now.
But this podcast is going to go a little bit different. So we've known each other for quite some time. Became, I'd like to say, good friends, as well as championing the same cause of good health, and kept in touch quite a lot. And then last year we hadn't talked to each other about 4 or 5 weeks, and we ended up at the same airport in Portugal, taking our children on holiday, and we bumped into each other. And then I didn't hear from you for a while. And then I find out my good mate, who is very primal, who share all the same beliefs about getting fibre right, what a good diet looks like, exercise probably more than I do, taught me so much, contribute to my book, et cetera, et cetera. You only went and had a heart attack.
I did.
So, let's talk about your story. Tell everybody about how you were doing so many things right with your health, living so primally, and yet you still had a heart attack. And let's try and discover what caused that, and then let's talk about what steps you're doing to make sure we don't have another one.
Right.
So it happened. It was 9th of August, wasn't it?
Yep, last year.
Talk us through it.
Yeah, so it was a pretty normal day, really. My wife and son were away. They'd gone on a surfing trip with his schoolmates down to Cornwall. And so I was just been to the gym that morning. No problem, full workout, bench pressing my own body weight, no problems at all. That's what I normally do. And
that, for those who don't know, by the way, is pretty impressive.
Didn't have any symptoms, no breathless, nothing at all. And I got back to my home and just sort of relaxed for a bit. I started to get this twinge around my chest. And I thought, that feels strange. I'll just ignore it for now and just go and get ready for work. And so I had a shower, started to get dressed, and it was getting really bad. Very sharp, crushing, central and left-sided chest pain, going down my left arm, and starting to feel a little bit breathless and a bit tight around here, like as if you're feeling a bit anxious, but there isn't a cause for it. That would be the best way I'd describe it. Anxiety without cause. And it got so bad that I was actually struggling to even walk, and I called an ambulance for myself. And that's how bad it was. If you ever called an ambulance for yourself, I'm not sure.
Twice.
Twice, gosh.
And actually, mine was, I was quickly say, because kind of related, I was struggling with the company. It looked like it was going bust. 1,000 employees. Couldn't find a way out of it. And I didn't realise it was stress at the time. And I called an ambulance. I thought I was having a heart attack. And in the end, you're just super, super stressed. And in the end, I ended up with a paper bag, breathing in and out because I was over breathing. But I did it twice in a short matter of months, all related to stress.
It was in the late 90s, wasn't it? I remember you telling me.
Yeah. So I have, but not as severe as yours.
I was hoping that's all it was, but then I'm not stressed. Why would it be stress? So the ambulance crew came round, put the electrodes on me, and they said, you're having a heart attack. And I said, no, not give me that. And I had a look at the ECG, and there it was, ST segment elevation in the inferior leads, and it was all there and fitted in with chest pain. So they got me straight to the cardiology ward, and within 10 minutes I was on the cath lab, and what they do is they put a little needle into your wrist here in the radial artery, right here you can see my scar there, and it goes all the way up to the heart. They found there was a large clot in my right coronary artery. They found my right coronary artery was disproportionately large. It was long and it was tortuous and so prone to atheroma. And they removed the clot, popped in a couple of stents, and sent me back to the ward. And I just lay on the ward reflecting on my life, thinking, my gosh, why has this happened? And that's the question that just stayed in my mind. Why has this happened to me? I eat well, I exercise, I think I manage stress pretty well. I'm not diabetic, my blood pressure is normal, my cholesterol and lipid profile is absolutely fine as well. Why has this happened to me?
And while you're lying in the ward, tell everybody about the text message you received.
Yes, so, before that, when I was being admitted to the ward, I spoke to one of the nurses, and she was taking some basic information and told her I was a doctor. And she said, oh yeah, we admit loads of doctors here. What? Wow, really? And then as I was recovering on the ward post-angioplasty, I received a text message from a friend who didn't know, and he said, oh my gosh, one of my partners has just collapsed and died. He's only 42, he's just collapsed and died of a heart attack at work.
And he was a GP?
He was a GP partner, yes.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, mate, you'll never guess where I am right now. And then it got me thinking about, why is this happening to doctors so much? My immediate concern at the time was obviously me getting better and trying to find the answers as to why this has happened. My cardiologist told me that it was down to two things, bad genes and bad luck. And that's something that's kind of difficult to accept because there's nothing I can do about that. I can't change my genes and I can't change my luck. But it wasn't till I spoke with our mutual friend, Asim Malhotra, who was just an incredible guy, and I had a tremendous amount of respect for him. And he's been so kind and supportive during this time, checking on me with text messages. And we had a chat, and he asked me this really interesting question. He said, how much stress would you say you've been under on a scale of 1 to 10 over the last 5 years? And I thought, okay, over the last 5 years, probably a 7 to 8. And that's when it really hit me that actually I've had low levels of stress that have, just have crept up and down and not been debilitating, but that sort of lingering stress over a prolonged period of time can have a pretty devastating effect to your overall health. And he put me in touch with an incredible cardiology nurse down in London to talk about how we can manage that, and we had a fantastic session together. And that really got me thinking about these factors related to stress, because I always thought I was pretty relaxed, chilled out guy. I'm not sure what your perception of me is, but fairly easygoing.
You know what? Stress is just the strangest thing ever, isn't it? Because yes, to me you appear totally relaxed, totally chilled out. Every time we've met, whether it be socially or work, but stress manifests in so many ways. When I had my 2 999 calls, I don't get stressed. That was my thing. I deal with stress. I don't get stressed ever. And they said, no, all your chest pains are stress. You're not having a heart attack. It's just stress related. And funny enough, about 6 months after that, the company didn't go bust, and we sold it to Argus, and we did quite well out of it. And literally within 2 days of selling the company, all my stress, which I didn't realise was stress, just went away. All my symptoms went away. And then before you go, crikey, stress manifests itself different ways in different people.
Yes, and I remember when I spoke with Malcolm Kendrick for our show, he talked about stress as a key factor for heart disease. But he said that the use of the word stress is actually not entirely accurate. What we should really be talking about is strain. It's what the stress is doing to us. You know, we can have two different people put the identical stresses upon them. One will feel stressed, the other one might just take it in their stride. So it's really about how that stress is affecting us, what that's doing to us, you know, physically and emotionally, mentally, and what we can do about it. And I think from my point of view, I guess, I don't know if I was in denial or maybe I was just taking on too much or I just didn't recognize it, but it can creep up on us without us realizing. And since then, I mean, when we first met, I was, you know, really immersed in this field and loved what I did and, you know, loved talking about it and coming on your show and a lot of other TV and radio appearances and wrote for magazines and newspapers. I couldn't say no. I just didn't want to say no to these opportunities because I was just so taken by it, but I didn't consider how much stress it was putting me under. So my default answer at the time was yes. Yes, you need me in the studio? Yes, I'll be there. I'll do it. Yeah.
And fitting that all in with still being a GP, practicing and all the hours that entails.
But it was just so much fun. I was, you know, passionate about it. I loved doing it, and it was just great fun to, you know, meet good people like yourself who are like-minded and enjoy this kind of work. And it was, you know, in hindsight, at the detriment to my own health. So nowadays, I've started to say no. In fact, my default answer is often no. I mean, obviously, you're a difficult person to say no to. I'm always happy to come and see you and say hello and talk to you on your show. But I've just started saying, well, actually, no. Let me just take some time out for me, look after me, spend time with my family, and just take it easy. And I'll still take on the opportunities, but they've really got to be something that really resonate with me. And things that I know that are not going to overextend me.
Yeah, I read a book recently called "This Is Going to Hurt," and the guy was a doctor in hospital, and he talks about how, you know, through the stages of training to be a doctor and the amount of hours, and we all know how hard doctors work and everything, but brilliant book, very insightful. But it's shocking how ill many doctors become just because that you're in a stressful job anyway, because you know that responsibility of proper diagnosis and so on, but the hours and everything. I mean, how stressful is it being a doctor, and are there any stats, or is it, were you just unlucky, or well, you had another friend that died during the same period of a heart attack who was a doctor. The nurse on the ward said to you, we get lots of doctors coming in here with heart attacks. Is it common for doctors, or?
It looks like it, yes, increasingly. And what's interesting is when I started working as a doctor back in, it was 2000, February 2000, we actually worked longer hours. You know, we have limits of doctors sometimes only work 48 hours a week. We were doing a full 48-hour weekend on call with no breaks. But what got us through it was the camaraderie. It was the culture that was created within the organisation, within the departments, within the hospital. And we had a great time. But I don't know if that is quite the same as it was back then. I moved into general practice in 2007, and what I noticed straight away was year on year, more demands were being made of us, not only clinically, but also at an administrative point of view. And many organisations have come in telling us what to do and how we're doing things wrong, and this is the new way we're going to do it, and you just have to do it, and no, we're not going to pay you anything extra, so, you know, roll your sleeves up, get on with it. And so doctors have kind of struggled with this, and we're seeing that now. Since 2013, we've lost 20% of our full-time equivalent GP partners. They've either retired early or emigrated or tragically are no longer with us. Suicide rates among doctors are up to 4 times the national average.
Crikey.
And this is something that I will never stop talking about. I'm tweeting about it and you know, engaging in many discussions because this needs urgent attention right now. And I think it's about a third of doctors confidentially admitted to taking alcohol, prescription drugs, or illicit substances just to get through their day-to-day shifts. That was in a BMA study last year.
So not just on their weekends off, but actually to get through the shift.
Yeah.
And you know, it's quite interesting that I've always taught in the business world, you know, all my managers, that, you know, one of the things that most people get stressed about is what you can't control. So bad bosses, people that you never know which way what they're going to say next, and then best friend 1 minute and then shout you down the next minute. Inconsistency of management and then changes of policies and all that. That's And that's exactly what you just said, actually, because, you're saying it was great in the early days when there was, but now you have all these companies come in and say, change this, do this, measure this, monitor that, more paperwork than actually probably even the practicing. That is stress, because you're not controlling your own destiny, at least if I'm doing what I'm trained to do, which is help people. And I don't mind doing that many, many hours, because that's what I love doing, helping people get healthy. But if you're taking me away from that and doing stupid sometimes for all the wrong reasons, paperwork that, I'm not saying all paperwork's stupid, but I can see why that frustration must come in, and with that frustration comes the stress, I guess.
Yes, and what we should be doing as doctors is, before we actually agree to take on this work, say, well, hold on, where's the evidence for this? Where's the evidence that this is going to work and give you the desired outcomes, and not going to overextend our staff? And if you don't have that evidence, we should actually refuse to do it. And we're doing fine. The NHS has been around for 72 years now, done okay. It's still ticking away. Why do we need to have so much administrative and bureaucratic tinkering and tweaking that is actually starting to cause overwhelming levels of stress and burnout and breakdown amongst our frontline staff? So I've got very passionate about supporting NHS workers in the front line and the things they go through. And it's some of the stories that I've been hearing about and reading have been really, really harrowing. And I think we do need to do more as a population to support our doctors.
Yeah, maybe you should get Mr. Hancock on to one of your podcasts and give him a piece of your mind. Ask him questions, but give him a piece of your mind as well.
I have invited him, and I actually tweeted something out today, and I tagged you and Mr. Hancock in. Interestingly, our mutual friend David Unwin, he actually managed to have 45 minutes with Matt Hancock, and he was telling me about this, because I was talking about all these frustrating things that we're going through in our profession. And he said, listen, I sat down with Matt and I have told him everything that you just said. So he knows.
Right, yeah.
And if he doesn't know, he doesn't need to look very far.
Yeah.
So,
those stats of, people leaving the profession, the writing's on the wall there, isn't it?
It is.
Now let's go back a step. So
yes,
you're training, you're eating properly. I've read your book, you read mine, we sing off the same hymn sheet, you're living very primally, but tragically you have the heart attack. Well, I say tragically, not tragically, because you're here. Is part of the reason you're actually still here because you were so fit? Did that help in any way? Because what is it, about a third of people that have a heart attack die immediately. The fact that you were healthy, did that help your chances of survival, or...?
I would guess so. I don't think we'll ever really know for sure. We do, as I touched on earlier, we do have a strong family history on both sides, my mother and my father. And in actual fact, since this happened to me, my maternal uncle sadly had a heart attack the following month, and he's only 10 years older than me. So, we are increasingly seeing that at a younger age. And when I put in a claim for my critical illness insurance that I talked about to you a moment ago, and they said, this is probably the biggest area that we do payouts, and there's no problems here at all. So don't worry about it; it'll all be processed. And so, but why is this happening? Because it's unnatural for someone under 60 to have a heart attack. There's got to be something happening at an environmental level, and I don't really think that genetics and bad luck on their own are enough to explain this. We've really got to look wider, and that's really what I wanted to do. And I think what it continues to drive me to is stress and how we can manage stress, or strain, as Dr. Kendrick would say. I've started to look more at de-stressing things and how we can, really, really deeply de-stress and relax and unwind, and started to take some of my own advice, shall we say. But I've really started to, practice meditation, which is something that's scientifically proven to help with hypertension and heart disease, and actually reduces the stickiness of the red blood cells, the coagulability. I didn't know that until I studied it a few months ago. And so that's got me really, really into talking about that. But at the same time...
Because what you're saying there as well, and it's so interesting, interviewing all the doctors for the book and also for this series. So the three in particular, I mentioned two of them already, Dr. Malcolm Kendrick, Dr. Asim Malhotra, and a gentleman called Ivor Cummins. So they were my three heart specialists, if you like, for giving me all the advice on how to hopefully avoid heart attack. And it's all in the book. But all three of them, and I said the same question, what's the 5 things we should all be doing to avoid a heart attack? All three of them, virtually the first thing that leaves their mouth is de-stress. You should de-stress. None of them mention the word cholesterol at any point in any of the 5 points, but always de-stress. Mindfulness, which I know, you talk about this a lot in your book. Mindfulness, de-stressing, and in fact, quite interestingly, off the back of that, some friends of mine were working for a company called Sewing Quarter, and it went bust. And they said, can you come and save it? And I went, it just doesn't fit in with my group of companies at all. And one of them said, well, you're wrong, Steve. And I said, why is that? They said, because we help people learn how to sew, and sewing and crafting is one of the most mindfulness things. So in the end, I bought the company. I bought the company not because it fitted in any of my organisations in any other sense, but yes, of course, anything you can do with your hands, anything you can craft, mindfulness. And Dr Seema, some of his friends in London are just brilliant around that area of yoga and relaxation and taking time out for yourself, that few minutes a day. And I guess for GPs, taking some time out for themselves is so difficult just because of the workload they're under.
Yeah, you've got to remember some GPs, they're starting work at 7 a.m. They don't get home till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And even then, they're not switching off because we're always kind of playing something out in our minds. Well, did I do that right? Or did I miss that? Or did I remember to do that bit? And the thing is, if we make just one of those mistakes, it can have devastating consequences to someone else's health and well-being and to our careers. Yeah. So it's a very stressful job. But I knew it was a stressful job before I signed up. My dad's a doctor. He was practicing for, I think 50 years in the NHS he worked. But I think more can be done to support us. I think that it's becoming more stressful. And there's a lot of talk nowadays in the NHS about resilience training, which really irritates me because it's almost psychological projection, saying, well, the problem isn't us, it's you. Yeah. You need to toughen up. So, well, actually, you don't want most of us to toughen up because you won't like what you'll see.
It's just even the choice of words is horrible.
It's terrible, isn't it? Yeah.
It's almost derogatory, that word, resilience. Be stronger. It's like telling somebody they're a beast because it's their fault. No, it's not their fault. Yes, they made the wrong food choices, but it's not their fault. They've been fed the wrong information. It's not. That's a terrible word. So you've had the heart attack. That was August. We're filming this in February, so 6 or 7 months ago. What have you changed? Because you were already fit. You were already eating the right things. What have you changed since? You've had some advice from Asim, and he asked you that question about how stressed are you on a scale of 1 to 10. What have you changed since?
Well, I mean, no one's got the perfect diet. No one's got the perfect lifestyle because we don't know what they are. So it's not about finding perfection. It's about looking for improvements. Where can I make a small change? You talked about 5 things that people can do to avoid heart attacks. Well, I think I was probably doing 4 of those things. It was just that 5th one that kind of crept up on me. So I think it's really about just looking at what we can do. And, I have started increasing my low-carb vegetable intake on the advice of a number of people, including my own cardiologist. You'll be glad to hear. He was talking about cutting down on carbohydrates. I've certainly been looking at de-stressing and practicing regular meditation. I studied meditation 9 years ago, and since this happened, I've really realised how incredibly important and powerful it is. In fact, my next book is going to be specifically about the scientifically proven effects of regular meditative practices. Because I think, we all think, we hear the word meditation and we kind of think that there's some Californian hippie chick trying it. And it's not, actually you get some top CEOs and executives doing it on a regular basis and what it can do for us. So I thought, well, let's forget the anecdotes, bring the science out there and say, this is what it's actually proven to do. Here's the literature, here's the studies, this is what they consisted of. So that is hopefully going to happen this year or next year. I'm meeting my literary agent.
Don't rush it too much because we don't need to get stressed.
Well, I think this is the kind of thing.
Are you back practicing as a GP now as well? Or?
Yes, I am. But I mean, this kind of work, it kind of just flows,
Yeah.
and that's never going to be stressful.
Good.
You know, it's just something that you enjoy doing, and that's the next thing I wanted to come on is start doing more of those things that I enjoy doing. You know, spending time with my family, with my friends,
Yeah.
you know, with good people like yourself who, you know, we have a great time when we're together, and you know what that can do to health. You know, the importance of community is.
Well, you've always been a big,
really important.
big believer of that, haven't you? You know, in your first book, The Big Prescription, you talk about the pillars of health, and one of those is that social well-being, and
Yes.
and, you know, having a group of friends and being out there and being active. And,
Yeah.
and
Well,
so on.
we've now got something within the NHS now called social prescribing, which has happened since the book came out. I'm not taking credit for it, just to be clear, but it's a really powerful a new project that's come out just to really help people look at social elements of their health and well-being. And after a pilot study, they managed to reduce A&E admissions by 66% by targeting the right people who are regular attenders. So, you know, there's a lot to be said about social factors.
Excuse my naivety, is this like saying to GPs eventually, here's a budget, not just for prescribing drugs, but maybe yoga classes, or here's some budget, you know, for certain people to go and do this, that, and the other?
Not exactly. There's what they have, someone called a link worker that comes in who has a lot of knowledge around, you know, services and facilities that are available within the community that perhaps a GP doesn't have. And also they have something the GP doesn't have quite as much of, and that is time. They can sit down with a patient for an hour and really get an understanding as to what's happening in their lives at a social level. In fact, there's a very there's a brilliant doctor who I'd be very happy to put you in touch with called Dr Mohan Sekram in Merton in London, who I went to medical school with, who's leading this within the country, doing some incredible work and getting some great results. And I had him on my show, and we had a fantastic conversation. So I think that things like social prescribing will really transform health. I think ultimately when someone is stressed, they're not always going to know it. It's going to take people around them who really know them well to say, hang on, mate, are you okay?
Yeah.
You know, do you want to just have a chat? Let's take a break. Let's go for a walk. Yeah. Let's get a bite to eat. And those kind of conversations can make such a massive difference to our health and well-being. Just people checking in on each other. And I think that this is something that we don't see quite as much as we did when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Everything's gone so digital, and there's always so many things you can sit and watch TV these days with Netflix and Amazon and everything that people forget that sort of. I always say to my kids, try it every single day and just do something that's kind to somebody, and it actually makes you feel happier anyway. And we all know that giving's better than receiving, but people just forget. And I try with my kids to make that part of their daily ritual. You know, phone up a friend that you haven't spoke to for a long time, or just go and say hello to somebody, and so on and so forth.
Well, you know, someone told me something very interesting, and I don't know how accurate this is, but they told me, so you might want to just check this if you're listening, but the actual center, the part of the brain that is stimulated by giving and receiving is the same part of the brain. The brain actually can't tell the difference between giving and receiving. So if you feel good from receiving something, you're going to feel good from giving something. Yeah. And you know, that's how things work within society. It's all about giving and receiving.
Absolutely. In fact, talking of the brain, a great podcast and a great contributor to the book was Dr. Robert Lustig from America.
Oh yes.
And he's in his latest book, Hacking of the American Mind. It's all about understanding the difference between sort of what we think is happiness and reward. So pleasure and happiness are two different things, two different neurotransmitters in the brain. And it's really fascinating for anybody that is feeling a bit stressed. One of the first books I would actually recommend to go and read is Hacking of the American Mind. And he does a brilliant job of really explaining what happiness is about. Because if you pursue happiness, that de-stresses you. If you pursue too much pleasure, that can add to stress. And often pleasure comes at the sacrifice of happiness. Yeah, 10 McDonald's in a week is pleasure, maybe, for some people. But does that make you happy? No, because eventually it leads to obesity and et cetera, et cetera. So great book. In fact, talking of Robert Lustig, one of his advice is to avoid heart disease. And also when I was talking to Patrick Holford, another brilliant doctor who's written some great books, they're big believers in omega-3. Are you up on omega-3 now? Or?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Because there's a lot of evidence to support that and open up the arteries and anything you can do to increase nitric oxide, according to Malcolm Kendrick. So anything that increases nitric oxide. So Malcolm was saying, if you really want to avoid a heart attack, start taking Viagra. And I said, well, what's that all about then, Malcolm? And Malcolm said, well, that Viagra increases nitric oxide in the body, that relaxes the veins, and actually, the big arteries going into the heart, it relaxes them. And he said several things that help us increase nitric oxide. One is exercise. Sunlight helps. So it's back to that living naturally and getting out a bit more. And I guess if you're a GP, you're locked indoors a lot of the time, and you're not getting a lot of the sunshine.
Yep, and also this time of year when it's getting a little bit longer now, but the days it's been a long winter, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And we get 6 hours of daylight sometimes, and this is the area that Public Health England actually agree with us here that everyone should take vitamin D supplementation throughout the winter months.
Yeah.
And that's something that I do. Having said that, my vitamin D supplement is a little spray, and it's exactly the same size and shape as my heart spray.
Okay.
So the other day, you'll never guess what I did. Took the wrong medicine and got a bit of a head rush for about 30 seconds. So I might need to have a look at some of your supplements today.
Funny enough, we are bringing out a spray for children very, very shortly for multivit and for D vitamin. And another one, I can't remember what it is now, but we have got 3 sprays coming out. What's in the spray for the heart medication, out of interest?
So that's something called glycerol trinitrate. And just exactly what Malcolm said, basically, it opens up the coronary arteries. So when someone starts to get chest pain, it's going to be from a coronary artery narrowing or from, which would be an angina attack or, a blood clot in there. And so I should carry the spray everywhere I go. And it's just 1 squirt under the tongue, and that it works within 30 seconds, opens up the artery. And you can take a second spray if you need to. Don't recommend taking more than that. If you need more than that, you need to call an ambulance.
Talking of calling an ambulance, and we'll come to an end in a moment. One last question for you. In fact, no, 2 more questions, sorry.
Go on.
So, you being a doctor, you've just been to the gym, you've got back, and a few hours later the chest pains are coming. You could probably recognise those symptoms probably better than the layman or myself, because you're a doctor and you witness this a lot more. What symptoms should our viewers and listeners be looking out for? And because again, you don't stress people, because if you stress them, that makes it even worse. But what symptoms are they looking out for that they then should be calling 999?
Okay, well, the obvious one is chest pain. Any sort of chest pain, you need to seek medical advice. But it can be beyond that, and not all heart attacks come with chest pain. My very first symptom was actually throat pain. Right here, it just felt a little bit tight. I wasn't breathless, just feeling like I was anxious, and a very sort of vague, non-specific symptom, which I couldn't really put down to anything. And anyways, so when people get the chest pain, it's like a crushing central, like someone's sitting on you, or it can be very sharp pain, radiating commonly to the left upper limb, from the shoulder all the way down, because it does go all the way down the hand. Breathlessness, sweats, dysphoria, which basically means that you're just feeling all just horrible and not quite yourself. I think I've covered everything there. Did I mention breathlessness?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Breathlessness and sweats. In fact, the first thing that the paramedic said was, "Do you have a towel?" Just wiping the sweat off me before he could put the labels on to do
a friend of mine sadly
ECG.
died in India, and that was his first symptom, sweating like crazy. What causes that?
What causes sweats? I think it's the sympathetic overdrive that comes in, because your body is basically fighting to stay alive.
So it's an overdrive trying to survive.
So it's adrenaline and everything, just supercharging you and just trying to keep you alive. That would be what I would think causes it.
And my final question, in fact, no, still 2 more.
Okay, go on.
My last but final question, which I ask everybody, and it's tragic, but no, it's fun. It's good in some ways that we're here talking about this, because you're here. I always ask everybody, don't I, what's the 5 things to X, Y, Z? And I never thought I'd be sitting here asking you about heart, because you're a GP, but there's so many other topics you're an absolute genius on. But we are where we are today, so I'm going to ask you, as a GP that's had a heart attack, what 5 things should we all be doing to try to avoid having a heart attack?
Okay, so I suspect that the people that you've asked this to, the cardiologists, have already said the commonest things. So I'm going to go a little bit off kilter.
Good.
And say things that that perhaps are not obvious. So, we all know about eating well and exercising and, not smoking and etc. So let's just put that to one side. I would say 5 things. Gosh, the first thing I would say is stop taking life so bloody seriously.
Yeah.
Have some fun. Let's just relax. I've never known society to be so stressed and uptight as it is at the moment. And I have been guilty of getting drawn into that. So let's just relax. I'm not saying that there isn't anything out there to be taken seriously. There are a lot of issues that we do need to address, but we shouldn't let it take over our emotional well-being. And we'll actually find that we can address them much better if we are emotionally detached from it. And we can just go in there from an intellectual point of view. So that would be the first thing. Have fun.
I say to my children on that one, stop taking yourself so seriously because nobody else does. Even me, your dad. It's so important, I say that to all my staff at work. It's just stop taking yourself so serious. It's like, come on, let's have some fun.
Have some fun, just relax.
Right.
The second one I would say would be have something planned in your diary on a regular basis that you've got to look forward to that's going to be fun, whether it's dinner with your mates, or going for a walk, or a concert, or an exciting film that's coming out pretty soon. Yeah. And just make sure that that you have a bit of fun around your life, and just try and light up other people's lives. That can make a big difference as well. I remember one time there was a knock on my door. I knew it was one of the nurses who wanted something. So before I answered, I pulled out my book and started pretending I was reading it, and she said, "Are you okay? Could you have a second?" I said, "No, I'm just taking some expert advice on something." Might use your book next time, actually, Fat and Furious. So yeah, let's just have a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
How far have we got? That's 3, isn't it?
Yep.
So the fourth one would be, let's look at how we can address stress across society. All the way across. Let's look at how we can, not only individually but collectively as communities, come forward and address and deal with stress factors. Because stress is I would argue, one of the top killers out there, and it's something that we can manage. We can help people address these factors without belittling them or telling them to be more resilient or slapping them in the back of their head or anything like that. And I think that would be the main thing. And you want one more, don't you?
No, that's fine. It doesn't have to be 5, but I mean...
Let me see if I can come up with something interesting.
You backed yourself into a corner because you said, I'm not going to do all the obvious ones like smoking and drinking, and so you backed yourself into a corner. But I mean, look, you've nailed it. It's stress, and what can we do to be happier and smile more? And my one, I would add on that those 3 experts that cardiologists I've been talking to didn't mention, but again, Dr. Lustig said, start searching and seeking happiness, not pleasure, and really start. And it's quite a heavy book to read, by the way, for everybody. So, but it's worth trying to get through it and really understand that principle of the emotion of pleasure is very, very different to the emotion of happiness. And happiness is family, it's friends, it's all the things you've talked about, going out for a walk, it's getting out in the sunshine, it's a nice, lovely day. It's all those things. It's being outdoors more, whereas pleasure is more reward-driven. And so many people confuse the two together. And we confuse the two together because the big corporations want us to. So they sell us a happy meal, a happy hour, I'm loving it. All those things that actually, no, they're not making you happy. They're giving you pleasure. So start seeking, and that's what you're saying in many, many ways. That social, being out with friends, getting things in your diary to look forward to.
Yeah. The final thing I would say, actually, I've just thought of it, would be don't overextend yourself. If you're not sure if something might be stretching you a little bit and it doesn't really resonate with you, don't do it.
Yeah.
Just be kind to yourself and look after yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be a martyr.
Yeah.
I often say when I speak to junior doctors nowadays is no one will thank you for working your backside off and burning yourself out just to help deliver someone else's political agenda.
Yeah.
You need to get some balance in your life and start to put yourself as a priority, and that's not selfish, and that should never be perceived as selfish. That's actually important. That's about how you can actually support your own self-esteem.
Well, there's that well-known saying, isn't there, that nobody will ever say on your tombstone, "I wish Dad had worked harder."
Yeah.
It's
I wish I'd spent one more day in the clinic.
Yeah, stay at work a little bit longer. And that thing also, by the way, of just sometimes just reflecting on the good things as opposed to worrying about what you haven't got. I keep saying that to my children, comparison is the theft of happiness. And I was with Richard Branson once, and we were talking about companies and stuff and things, and I said, crikey, you're at the top. And he said, "No, I'm not." What do you mean, Richard? "No, I'm not." He said, "All these trillionaire business, internet-y type people." He said, I'm not even in that league. He said, "I'm very successful, of course, and And I drilled down below that, and I realised that everybody always wants to be the next thing, and sometimes you've just got to say what you've just said is enough's enough. I've got my family. So it's just sometimes saying, look, be happy. Just be happy.
Yeah, you're fine where you are, and there's nothing wrong with wanting more.
Yeah.
But don't compare yourself to people because you don't know what they've been through, what their struggles are, and chances are they might not be any happier than you. So that's good. And you must get Sir Richard to read this, by the way. So
well, here's an interesting thing. And Richard, if you're watching this, look, we're very honest and very open. I've had a run-in with Richard's doctor, who disagrees with many of the things I'm saying, and he's Richard's personal doctor.
Send him my way.
I'll just leave it at that for now. But yeah, Richard Branson's personal doctor and I don't see eye to eye, and he knows I'm not a doctor, but this is 23 doctors speaking in here, not me. And it was around looking after one's heart. Anyway, my final question is, I ask everybody, what would you like Dr. Shan Hussain's legacy to be?
Oh gosh, cared. I think what I want to do and the message I want to give it's not coming from my ego. It's about helping others, and making a bit of noise, being a bit of a disruptive rebel who doesn't really care about consequences, particularly from authoritarians who routinely tell us how to live our lives and what we should or shouldn't be doing. I'd much rather be remembered as someone who actually met someone where they are, and not necessarily told them what they should or should be doing, but actually say, well, what do you want? And, can I help? What can I do to help you get to where you want to get to?
Well, I think you've done that today, because I think it's very brave to have gone through what you've gone through, and then to come and share that story with us all. And I think it's been, I've learned a lot today from you, and I hope everybody watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast series, I think we've just learned a lot. And look, we wish you great success in the future.
Thank you.
And let's maybe both start to just be happy.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's not chase podcast number 500. You know what I mean? God bless you, mate. See you soon.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this podcast, then why not subscribe to the full series so you can hear from all the incredible health professionals we spoke to. For the full story, you can also get the book Fat and Furious, written by Steve Bennett, available on Amazon. And to say a huge thank you for watching us here on YouTube, we are even offering you an exclusive Amazon discount code so you can get yourself a copy. For more details, head to the description below.